Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Second Page Podcast. This is episode 38 for the boss, the DeVos. The mob is the job. I am Joseph Oswald. With me, as always, and in a fancy new chair and behind a new desk would be Mr. Steve Johnson, producer at large. However, I do believe we have a guest of your family now running the cameras and the keyboard, and I think it's really great. This is how America works. Learning a new trade, and it's very good for anybody. Would you like to introduce? I know he's not on camera, but I feel like we should say something.
Well, today's episode is brought to you by nepotism.
Yeah.
We have an intern. He's running the boards. I am sitting at the table. Haven't been here for a while. Feels kind of good.
It's nice to look across the back at someone again. Jay's still coming back soon, but it's good to have someone back there. So,
maybe Jay will take the middle chair.
I think I think that's well in order, my friend. In order.
And our new intern is, if you watch on the reel, it is LeVar Jr.
LeVar Jr.
Yeah.
LeVar Jr. How you feeling today? You can yell across the room.
Good. All right. Courtney's watching us, so
kind of feels like
yeah,
of course. Well, it kind of feels like in
story.
The Fifth Element when he's asking him like how he feels about being on the show, and he's like, good. Okay. Well, this week we will have an open discussion on the second coming of the mob era, the government edition. The blind loyalty based in fear or envy has built the foundation of a government mirrored on a financially and morally bankrupt business empire. Betsey DeVos, warden of the now oxymoronic education department and woman who cannot set foot in a public school lest she burst into flames, now believes that money set aside for music, art, and mental health for students should be utilized in arming teachers and faculty all across the country. While conservatives would like to say we should not politicize the gun debate, they waste no time in using the victims of violent crime for their own purposes, regardless of the family's wishes or evidence to the contrary of their assertions. Pompeo's trip to NoKo is a no-go on orders.
Was good.
Thank you.
That was good.
On orders of the comically short-sighted president, who would rather walk away from a tough fight than take a punch. He did tell us he would make up an excuse as to why it didn't work out, and also that he didn't know anything about Stormy Daniels. The battle of the midterms. Winter is coming, but will it be a blue wave putting out the conservative fires of hatred, or a red tide poisoning our future, leaving behind a lifeless swamp, a shell of what was once a vibrant democracy? Come tell us what you think. Comment live. Call in on Skype. Be a part of this conversation. We all know that democracy dies in the silence and the darkness. So we are live this afternoon, and we will go right to the beginning of the conversation. I do believe the country is now being run by the mob, but a different kind of mob, the American mob that used to be in business, and now it's all about government.
Yeah, see, at first I thought I wanted the Trump movie to be directed by Adam McKay, but now I want it to be directed by Martin Scorsese.
I think he would probably do a really good job.
Yeah.
Can only imagine all the horse heads we'd find. But as it is right now, it would seem that our dear leader is embroiled in his, regular weekly conflict. I believe what was it last week was Omarosa, and today
By the
it's
way,
Jeff Sessions.
Omarosa must be pretty sort of pissed off now that Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort have taken her spotlight, because I saw no Omarosa book plugs after around Tuesday at 1 o'clock.
Really?
Yeah.
Not one.
Not even one.
No comments about her. Nobody saying, "Oh, what about what she said and this, there, and the other thing." Do you think she's coming back?
Well, honestly, I think the only way she comes back now is if she drops the N-word mixtape.
But you can only imagine that Kanye would then sample it.
Of course.
And try to make some money off of it. Well, as it stands right now, Donald Trump is on the record as saying that he thinks that flipping, which for those of you at home who don't understand mob jargon, means somebody who was once loyal to you and working for you, then flips and goes to
the flippers.
They go and support federal cases.
Dolphins.
Not to be confused with dolphins, who are
by the way, did
gentle,
you notice
smart creatures.
He said, "I know all about flippers."
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he had just come back from a swimming pool, because he did go on that rant about a 7-layer chocolate cake when he couldn't remember what country he was bombing.
Also, do you ever notice everything he's talking about? It's like, I know all about this.
He's the smartest about everything, right? And has the greatest memory.
But what does it say that the president of the United... And I'm not going to get into what if Obama did it, because what if
we
Obama
all know
did it.
exactly what happened if Obama
But
did it.
the president of the United States says that flipping should be illegal,
despite the fact that there are whistleblower protection rules.
This is the guy who said they should lock her up.
Yeah, the guy that said lock her up.
The Law and Order guy.
Law and Order thinks that we should not be following the rule of law if it harms him or his campaign or puts any of his cronies in the position to be imprisoned. And most recently, he has argued that Jeff Sessions, and I quote, does not understand what is happening in his own department, in reference to why Jeff Sessions says he will not allow politics to affect the decision-making in the Justice Department. This all stems back to the very beginning of the presidency when he notably mentioned that if he had known Jeff Sessions would recuse himself from the Russian investigation, he would not have appointed him.
And I remember all these Republicans that don't have a problem with what he's saying felt like, Eric Holder and Obama were just too close. Anyways, Courtney says about Omarosa, if she has more tapes, then there's nothing to worry about.
Well, I think that, like you said before, that she's looking for the most opportunistic moment to drop them. And at this point, I mean, I'm a 50-50 with her. I don't hate her. I don't love her. She's got something. Just, give it to us. Collect your check.
I hate
I mean, she did turn down. I mean, listen, you got to think a little bit. She did turn down the $15,000 a month seeming bribe. But one of the things that I've found most notable, and I'm kind of working my way from most recent to the beginning of the week, and since we didn't go live last week, my fault. I was in England getting engaged. But
hey, how about those apples?
Thank you. The great apples. I love a good apple. For all the shaming and the attacks on Jeff Sessions that Donald Trump puts in the media on interviews, through Rudy Giuliani, through his Twitterverse, he's uncharacteristically hesitant to fire him. It's most notable because Jeff Sessions has a very strong, albeit old-fashioned support in the Senate. As a former senator, he does have a lot of Republicans on his side and Democrats that understand that from the beginning with his recusal that there is some, you can't be too partisan on everything. And despite the fact there are way better opportunities for
first of all, okay,
Attorney
we need
General,
to be clear about
he's doing
something.
What he said from the beginning. He's getting
Jeff
things
Sessions
done for Donald Trump, but he recused himself.
Should not be in that office.
Agreed.
But not because he's not loyal to the president, because Coretta Scott King took him to task in the 80s about being too racist. Well, if you're too racist in the 80s,
yeah,
like
if you're too racist then, you're too racist definitely now.
Now Courtney says he thought Obama and Holder were brothers, but that's my point. There are Republicans, including Lindsey Graham, which I thought had a spine, but apparently not.
Yeah, well, his spine was about as strong as an actual graham cracker.
Right.
Which I'm not calling him a white. I don't see race or color. He could be blue for all I know.
Those same people say that Trump has every right to expect loyalty from his attorney general, but those people were upset that they thought Obama and Holder were working too closely together.
The endless strain of hypocrisy is not going to end anytime soon, and I don't think we should expect it. But you have to also take into consideration that Trump usually doesn't care what will happen in the future. He generally seems very short-sighted. But
5 minutes
it would be unlikely, especially coming this close to the midterms, and even going off of what Lindsey Graham said, that he wouldn't support losing Jeff Sessions until after the midterms are over to avoid the conflicts of interest and the politics of it, because even Donald Trump would be open to some assault from the right.
He says Jeff Sessions is a Keebler Nazi elf.
He is. He really is a Keebler Nazi elf, and he just kind of wants to he just wanted to just hang out and wear his Klan robes and change his name to Jim Crow legally and just die in office knowing that he was a supreme white man, and that's all he wanted to do. And I don't think that he deserves to be the attorney general, and I don't think that he should be fired for not being loyal to Trump, because while part of what Lindsey Graham says is true, that any president should expect to have the cabinet that he wants, it is not and has not always been the case that the cabinet and the people working in the executive branch of the federal government should be all people that the president loves implicitly. It should be people that he trusts, absolutely, but anybody working in government should be someone we trust. The people that get appointed to cabinet positions, as Obama very clearly showed,
they got something on Lindsey Graham.
Well, they might, but
no,
the thing is,
definitely have something on Rand Paul. But go ahead.
Well, I don't know about that. Maybe, but we can talk about that as the mob story goes on. But the thing about Jeff Sessions is that he was appointed and was expected to be loyal to the president, but you know to play devil's advocate, as we often do on the show, he is attempting to fulfill the ethical duty of his job, even if, just like during the Inquisition, they thought it was ethical to execute people for not being Catholic. He's following the letter of the law, even if he's bastardizing it. And the members of the cabinet are supposed to be people that have the best interests of the country at mind and at heart, not the best interests of the president. The president is the chief executive, and he's supposed to be the buck is supposed to stop there. He's supposed to be the decider. But if the people under him are undermining him in a small way, it is understandable how you could think and why the whole serving at the pleasure of the president even exists.
But that's
phrase
the thing.
exists
Why
for a
not?
reason.
Why doesn't he fire him?
Because he's afraid. Because Jeff Sessions has been there since the beginning. He knows things, and if he were to flip on the president, the very strong conservative majority in the Senate would probably turn on Trump.
I don't think so.
No, I think they would, because none of the sitting senators at the time were willing to support Donald Trump, and most of them still don't. They begrudgingly do it because they want Republican control of things. They want conservative judges.
See, but here's the thing. I think, and Courtney brings this up, and I tend to agree. He says, every attack on Sessions is another brick in the obstruction case. But I think Trump's support is rock solid. And as long as he keeps that, strong 38% base of the country, of the voting population or whatever, he is going to be fine and people are going to cower to him. So if he replaces Jeff Sessions, that's more of an issue towards his legal troubles as opposed to...
But it's not as simple as just replacing Jeff Sessions. I mean, yes, the president can at will fire most people in the executive branch without cause simply because he's the president, just as he can pardon people simply because he's the president. It's a constitutional power. But each individual is different. I mean, it's not like replacing Anthony Scaramucci. That was easy. The Mooch, and Sean Spicer. That was a little difficult. Spicy was difficult. But you eventually get to someone like Sarah Sanders, this robot, ashen woman who is perfectly fine reciting lies and parroting the things that she's told to say.
Who's worse, Sarah Huckabee Sanders or Kellyanne Conway?
Kellyanne Conway, because she has a choice in this. I mean, when you're the press secretary and your father is Mike Huckabee, you need to hold up the honor of your family and blah, blah, blah. You have to. I can see a little bit of why Sarah Sanders has to do what she does. She could change her personality, but she's doing what she's supposed to do. Kellyanne Conway is a counselor, an unelected official, an unappointed, made-up job who is just feeding vitriol into Donald Trump's ears
and into the country, but also
into the country. Yes.
Also, have you been paying attention to her husband on Twitter?
I don't pay attention to her.
Okay, so her husband.
I know that they are again. That he's on the opposite end here and does not like Donald Trump openly. Debates with them, but I don't care what they say.
But they are, I can't remember the reporter's name, but they invited a reporter into their house and explained how the presidency is putting a strain on their marriage.
I mean, I don't want to disparage her, especially because, being a woman, it's hard to, say anything about a woman specifically that's negative, but she is, for all intents and purposes, a nasty woman. She is a person who does not care or does not seem to care about the rest of the people.
The only nasty woman is Hillary.
Yeah, she's nasty with capital N.
Okay.
This is a legitimately mean-spirited woman, self-interested, who does not care about what's good for the country. She cares about advancing herself and advancing her own backwards, personally, opinion, of course, backwards ideology. I'm not worried about what
Kellyanne Conway has an ideology.
If we circle back to the beginning of the conversation, the whole point was that it would be very difficult to replace Jeff Sessions, especially before midterm, especially with the Senate the way it is. And one of the things I wanted to bring up today, that I saw a post going around Facebook that because John McCain has now decided he's not going to further his treatment for cancer treatment. So he has been absent for a couple weeks from the Senate, which has left the Senate at 99 voting members, which means things are being passed with a 50 to 49 majority vote. The quorum rule for the Senate is to have a majority of the Senate there, which means you need 51 members in order to do business. One thing that is being suggested right now, and I've gone through the Constitution and I've looked up the rules of the Senate, is that, for one, Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution says that a majority is required for quorum to do business, but a smaller number can adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each may provide. However, the rules of the Senate don't provide a penalty. The rules of the Senate say that a non-quorumed group of senators may compel the sergeant at arms to bring the other members to the floor of the Senate in order to begin business. If you ever remember House of Cards, the first season, Frank Underwood did that in the House to prevent a protest vote. So what some people are suggesting to halt Brett Kavanaugh and any future appointments that Trump puts up is if all 49 Democrats and John McCain, still alive, do not show up, then the Senate cannot conduct business and cannot legally proceed with appointments, which they've changed the judge rule, so you still need 51 votes. So if John McCain and 49 Democrats do not show up, the president pro tempore or the president of the Senate cannot be that vote because they are not actual senators. They are tiebreakers and president of the Senate. They're not members of the legislature. So the Senate could actually be halted if all 49 Democrats do not show up for the confirmation hearings for Brett Kavanaugh. They can be compelled to do so, and it's difficult as you get closer to D.C. You know, the Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, he'd be the first to find. They would literally have to be on the run. The 49 Democratic senators would have to go into hiding and refuse to show up because the sergeant of arms could arrest them and drag them into the floor of the Senate, compel the roll call, and then the Republicans could then conduct business until they adjourn.
Right, but there are also Democrats in purple states that
wouldn't
just
do that.
Wouldn't
but it's just this is where we are right now, that we're trying to find any way possible to stop this, because if the midterms go through and we do not take back the Senate or the House, then Donald Trump now has the impetus to literally get done anything he wants and very much increases his chances of being reelected in 2020, which I know you believe he will be, but I still hold out hope that he will be neutered and end up like one-term presidents have. And we've had one-term presidents, most recently Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, we'll see. But Jimmy Carter wasn't the kind of president that would do something like start a war to...
No, Jimmy Carter gave up his peanut farm to avoid conflict of interest. And when he said that he was had felt unfaithful in his heart with regards to his relationship with his wife, just saying that he felt like he may have cheated in his heart almost derailed his campaign, whereas Donald Trump can literally say that he's grabbing someone by the pussy and be set free.
Forget about that,
by
even
the political
though
establishment.
You know, you shouldn't, or we shouldn't. But like,
never forget.
Let's be clear that it's not even just locker room talk. Like there's now documented evidence that he's illegally paid people off. By the way, how many people flipped on Trump this week? Courtney did have some things to add before we get into that. So he says he thinks that Conway and Sanders are the Hydra. Says Conway's worse. No, he says Sanders is worse, and he heard Conway actually hates Trump. I don't know if she hates Trump, she should win and ask her.
And sapping the vitality from her.
And Courtney also says any Dem that votes gotta go. Listen, that's Joe Manchin is gonna vote for Kavanaugh. I'm telling you right now, because Joe Manchin's like basically a Republican.
Yeah, I mean him. Yeah, we'll Claire McCaskill's in a little bit of trouble there, being out of Missouri. It sucks because this midterm coming around, Democrats, while they have this blue wave behind them, they also have their backs up against the wall because most of them are up for re-election. Yeah,
right. Like
it's possible
it's
they won't take
easier for them
the
to take the House, but it's going to be harder for them to take the
right
Senate.
Now, I believe the most recent prediction is that Republicans have a 28% chance to hold the House, but a more than 50% chance to keep the Senate.
Right.
Really, you really only need one to put up a fight. But if the midterms are lost, then that's another 2 years going the same way we are now. And in 2 years,
also,
almost 8 years of Obama's presidency and 8 years of progress and 8 years of job creation and growth and personal and civil development will be wiped away.
But conversely, if Trump gets impeached, we'll all be poor.
What?
You didn't hear him say that?
I mean,
so
he always assumes that people cannot be successful without him, but I did not hear that.
Oh, no. Okay. So the day after the sentencing and the guilty verdict and the guilty plea, he did an interview with Fox News saying, like, you know, basically,
the stock market will crash and all that.
The stock market will crash, and he literally said, everybody will be poor. Because the keys to the castle are all up here.
Yeah. I mean, this is a person who really, really does not care what comes out of his mouth, and he always thinks that he's going to be safe. And I think that's why it's easy for people like us to believe that he did all of these things that he's accused of, and that these people that are flipping on him accuse him of, because it's totally reasonable to see how somebody who's gotten away with so much, who's had so many silver spoons shoved up his mouth and ass, that he never thinks that he can be touched, that he's been protected by lawyers and money and privacy for many years. But as president of the United States, that privacy protection, that goes away. And you should know from military history and from anything, you break one party of flank, you can have a strong army. You break the flank on one side, the weakest link collapses and the whole army falls.
But here's the thing, though. If the Republicans win in November, it is a mandate to continue what they're doing. Because
if Republicans win in November, it's absolute 100% proof that gerrymandering has stolen democracy from this country.
Okay, here's the thing. If the reason Trump continues to do what he does is he realizes that, okay, I'm going to say something crazy, people are going to say it's the worst day of the presidency, there's no way I can come back from this, and then his poll numbers stay the same, he goes to a rally, and then when it gets too bad, he'll say something even crazier, and continues down that line and ratchets it up, and his Republican colleagues have been complicit or spineless or too scared or whatever to do anything about it.
When was the last time you heard Paul Ryan's voice?
It's in the form of tiny violence. But the thing is this.
Tiny violence.
If nothing happens, that is just more confirmation that it's okay to continue on the path that we've been on. Because why? There's no consequence, right? You can blow up the deficit after you spent 8 years of talking about the Democrats blowing up the deficit. You can cut taxes only on CEO pay rates went up 17% in the last 2 years. Meanwhile, middle class pay increases and working class pay increases went up.
No, they went up, but the rate of inflation wiped out all that to do a most recent.
But this is what I'm saying.
It went 0.1% decline in wages.
Okay. I was going to say it went up 0.3, but inflation went up higher than that. So, yes.
And that is the
negative 0.1
that we keep facing, where, before, when Obama was president, the economics and the numbers and all that stuff, they didn't matter. But now when Donald Trump is president, the same line of economics works. But then when you're saying that it's going to cause problems like these tariffs are hitting Iowa.
What Republicans are talking about economics and the debt and healthcare. They're not talking about it because they know what they've done, and they can't run and win on that. So you have to create boogeymen.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? I mean, that's always how it's been.
Listen, I'm telling you right now, when we get into the swing of campaign season, there are going to be Hillary Clinton ads like she's still running. There will be.
And right now, I mean, even in New Jersey specifically in this area, they're running huge ads to support Bob Hugin against Bob Menendez Huggin. I don't know anything about him except that he's not Bob Menendez. It's all he's doing is attacking Bob Menendez and all these indictments and these things. Even though he didn't get found guilty of any of them, he was still punished a little in the Senate. And while Bob Menendez might have done a lot of shady things after being in politics for 30 years, they don't think that they think that it's unreasonable for someone like Bob Menendez to remain in the Senate doing what he's done, having done what he has done. But someone like Donald Trump, it's perfectly reasonable for him to be president, for him to appoint federal judges to life, for him to go to rallies and to support these candidates that think the same way he does and put them in Congress. And he's surrounded by corrupt officials who are just left and right.
What about the two guys that supported him first getting in trouble for insider trading and then campaign finance violations?
Yeah, I mean, he keeps saying it's a witch hunt, but we're finding a lot of witches.
This new guy blamed his wife. What's his name? Do you remember his name?
It's in my notes somewhere. Collins?
No, Chris Collins is the insider trading guy that told his son.
Yeah, that was the one we talked about 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
but this new guy, I can't remember his name. He was in the military, and he used his campaign donations.
Oh, to pay for vacations.
Right, to pay for vacations. Something like he spent something
like
like
headline about it.
$300,000 or $400,000. Him and his wife got indicted, and then he goes on Fox News the next day and says, "My wife had power of attorney since I was in the military, so I mean they're gonna have to look into her." They don't even sit together in court.
Well, I mean,
like
he's going off the notion that a husband and wife cannot be compelled to testify against one another. And that's the notion that he's going off, because he can say anything he wants, but he can't be forced to testify in open court, and they can't use the things he says necessarily that easily. But he was on the record. He's on the record.
Still on the ballot.
Yeah. Well, and also you can't. There's certain state laws do preclude you from taking your name off a ballot in a certain time before an election. That's what's happened with Chris Collins too. Is that he is not going to seek the seat, but he can't take his name off the ballot because that's New York law.
By the way. This guy, find his name out for me. The new guy. But he says
he wasn't even in today's
FBI
headlines.
Because there's so much going on. He says the FBI is an arm of the Democrats. Like, you spent the campaign money on Walmart and vacations to Italy. You blamed your wife and the Democrats. That is.
I mean, that just sounds exactly like Tom Price, like Scott Pruitt. Like all these people who've just been spending federal government money as if it was their own, despite the fact that they themselves are wealthy, which should show any common voter, any middle-class American, that it doesn't matter how wealthy you get, you're still perfectly well-suited to and probably more likely to be mischievous, to steal, and to be corrupt, because you want to preserve and grow that wealth, whereas most people who just want to get by day to day, they don't have the time, the resources, or the desire to be like that. And yes, there are plenty of common criminals and violent criminals. When we're talking about corruption and financial crime and things that these type of people tend to fall in these categories, Trump is completely surrounded by them. Every single member of his cabinet, every single member of the in the public eye of the executive branch is accused of or is provenly corrupt. And nobody under his umbrella of support is willing to do anything about it. Hey,
at least we're draining the swamp.
It's like draining the swamp into your backyard pool. You know, you're just going to ruin good property by pumping swamp water into it so that you can have a dry swamp later. That's what they're doing. I mean, it's not draining the swamp. He's moving the waters into a smaller area so that it gets deeper, so that he can hide all of the corruption, so that he can make sure that when he's done being president, that the Trump empire is richer and more powerful than it's ever been.
Right.
And he complains about the Clinton Foundation all the time. What do you think the Trump Foundation is going to do?
After he runs.
Well, now CNN is saying that they have secured information about a previous doorman to Trump Tower who has information
of a catch and kill,
of alleging that Trump had an affair with an ex-housekeeper and produced a child.
Yes.
And these are all things that Donald Trump has tried covering up his entire life.
But it is a good thing that he has the support of the evangelicals.
Oh, thank God, right? He has the support of the evangelicals who don't have the support of their own God. They've created God in their own image and are blasphemous, and that's what I think. I think that most religious people are good people and want the best. But when you get so fanatical that you're willing to support
guns.
If you're getting so fanatical that you're willing to support a human, a fallible and sinful human being as your leader on earth, as if he were your leader on earth in heaven, then you are a blasphemer. Then you are someone who does not deserve to call themselves a preacher or a pastor, and does not deserve to have their words listened to and believed as truth. because I do believe that it's perfectly reasonable and within everybody's rights to believe what they want when it comes to religion. If you want to be a Jedi, you can be a Jedi. If you want to be a Rastafarian, you can be a Rastafarian. And if you believe that certain people interpret or speak the word of God, then you're more than welcome to do that. But when it is done to the detriment of many, when it is done out of malice, when you know you are lying, when you know that the things you are doing are harming people but benefits you, then I have no respect. I have no respect for it. I don't believe that that's protected, but you can't do anything about it.
So I think that
it's a cultist thing. I don't like cult leaders.
I don't know. I mean, maybe some of it is that, but what I really think it's about is the Supreme Court justice picks. Right.
Well, that's what my whole conversation was about, was blocking Brett Kavanaugh's appointment.
No, I know. What I'm saying is the evangelical support, I think they know he's and we have to separate evangelicals with the cast of clowns that come on to support him every day. Not everybody is like
hi, Michaela.
A Cleflo Dollar,
you know. Hey, Debbie.
Preacher, right?
And Livia.
We have to understand that a lot of the evangelicals are like, look, I don't like the decisions that have been coming down in the court. And if I got to stomach this guy for 4 or 8 years, but he'll reshape the Supreme Court, which will get laws that I want passed for the next 40 years, then it's a sacrifice I have to make. I don't agree with that, because
in the private world,
if that's what you have to sacrifice, like, do you do a deal with the devil? Is that ever okay?
Think about when you take jobs. If you go to apply for a job at a big multinational corporation, you go to work for Monsanto or any of these companies you're accused of dumping oil or gas or chemicals into the environment. You go there, you get a job, and you're making a lot of money and doing very well, despite the fact that you know the people you're working for, the company you're working for, is doing damage to your society and your environment. You stick with it because you yourself need to survive. Also, and all these people surrounding Trump, they know that if they flip on him, that the only way they survive is if they flip on him and get credit for it and are paid for it and are embraced by the other side.
Once the polls turn in their favor, you will see all of them that are going to bat for him now, pretending they never knew him.
Victory is 100 fathers, but defeat is an orphan.
Right.
And Donald Trump is not ready to take on any more children than he already has.
Right. And so but this is the problem, because what we say when we point to the economy doing well, and I'm happy it's doing well, and I'm a participant, as are you and everybody else, but I'm a participant and a benefactor of this good economy that we have right now. We need not forget where this bull run started, and it is a continuation of that. But aside from that, when we say that it's okay that, you know, children are separated from their parents at the border, when we say it's okay that the president is an unindicted co-conspirator, when we say it's okay that the president is on a daily basis obstructing justice, when we say it's okay for the president to actively participate in dividing the country, when we say that it's okay for the president to not show the level of class and valor that we have come to expect from presidents because the economy is good, it says that we have traded money for morals, right?
Well, I mean, I told you before the show.
Is prosperity or monetary prosperity greater than moral prosperity?
To a lot of people, it is. And I mean, going back throughout human history to 4000 BC, when we started recording history, the people are more willing to do something if they think it will benefit them, especially financially, than if it's good for than something that's better for everybody.
We were also recording history before 4000 BC, but Caesar burned down the Library of Alexandria, and then there's that. But anyways,
Caesar. Nonetheless, I think that Cree proverb that I told you about, which I'm not going to repeat verbatim, but which I've taken to heart, is, you know, when the last river is poisoned and, you know, the last leaf falls from the tree and the last grape falls from the vine, only then will man realize he cannot eat money. But Donald Trump is the type of person that thinks that money is sustenance.
What if you put ketchup on money? Because ketchup does help a lot.
If it's got no high fructose corn syrup, I believe that it would work.
Okay, what about A1 sauce?
Well, A1 goes with everything.
Okay, there you go.
Goes with everything.
So
A1 sauce, if you're watching, send us a check. I think that when you have someone that believes that money is all that there is in the world, and it's the only thing that defines your success, and the only thing that defines whether or not you're a good leader, or whether or not you are the type of person that should be put in charge of certain things. If money is the only option, then there's no point to middle classes. There's no point to lower class. There's no point to democracy or a republic.
By the way, those things are disappearing anyway.
They are. But there's no point to any of that stuff if you think that the only reason to be here is to make money, and that people that have money are to be revered, because they're not. Betsey DeVos, rich as hell, dumb as a brick. Betsey DeVos, I don't mind if she would come down here and have this conversation with us, because I think there are plenty of people that would love to debate her and ask her why she thinks that guns are more important in school than books. Why she thinks that private schools...
You can't shoot a book.
Yeah, well, yes you can.
Well,
you can throw a book really hard too.
Okay.
Someone should throw the book at her. But she has so much money that she's able to buy all the support, and now judges like Judge Ho,
also able to buy yachts to people
the 22 appellate judges that Donald Trump has gotten approved in the federal court, and the 20 some odd other federal judges that have lifetime appointments that believe that money equals speech, and that there should be unlimited campaign contributions, because their interpretation of the First Amendment, it's not about the actual speech that we use, that we have the right to speak from our lungs, from our lips. So we have the right to get on a soapbox, and if people are willing to listen to us, to speak louder. No, they're saying that you can be a recluse with no societal contact, with no community, with no outside human interaction. But if you are rich, then you should be allowed to influence and decide how everything is done in the world, from municipal tax rates and use of roads and sewage to the treaties that we make with the rest of the world, despite the fact that there are 330 plus million people living in this country who all, in theory, should have an equal say in how the future of the country is done. And I get that we live in a democratic republic. I really do understand that, and I do appreciate it, and I prefer that form of government. But we have taken away the democratic part of that, and we have bastardized the republic part of that with puppets and figureheads that just get appointed and rubber stamped, and then the wealthy just beget more wealthy people. And they are reasserting this idea of serfdom, of these feudal lordships where money is the only thing that gives you power, and we let it happen because we make up excuses that money is free speech because we can contribute money and affect certain things, but money is not free speech because money isn't real. Even the Federal Reserve, a Federal Reserve note is backed by the U.S. Treasury, and that belongs to everybody, whether you're rich or poor. Money is something that we use to to keep economy going and to decide who lives and who dies, who gets an education, who doesn't, who gets to see a doctor and who doesn't. And a lot of places in the world are cutting back on that or regulating it in a way that is maybe a little bit slower and maybe not as profitable, but the societies are stable. Most of these countries in Europe, they have problems with certain things like terrorism and other stuff like that. But for the most part, people feel safe where they live. They think that their future is okay, that if they get sick, they won't die, that if they don't get the best education in the world, they'll still have a good job. I mean, the German Constitution guarantees all of those things. The parliamentary system of England has a House of Representatives, House of Commons and Lords. They can pass a law, and that's it. It's done. It's in the books.
America's not a shithole, right? Like, you can still be prosperous here. You can still do stuff. Are we on the verge of some crazy things happening right now? Absolutely. Could it all go left? Absolutely. Do I like where the trajectory we're on? Probably not. But let's not, pretend that Europe is just so much better.
I never said that. I simply said that we are part of the Western civilization when it comes to our form of government and political ideology. And in the past 30 or 40 years, most of those governments and countries that have been around hundreds of years before us have moved to a form of social democracy, or a democracy in which majorities rule but minorities are not oppressed. And they have an understanding that as a community, as a society, that if they don't stick together, that they will fall. And maybe it has to do with how many countries there are in Europe and how long they've warred with each other. And that America doesn't have that problem. We're not worried about Canada or Mexico invading.
I hear you about Europe, but let me ask you a question. Other than the mayor of London, how many black or minority prime ministers have we seen in Europe, or presidents? Right? Or
that's hard to say, because now you have to clarify that a minority in that country or what we perceive as a minority in America, because yes, blacks are technically a minority.
How many formerly colonized people have actually come to rule in any of the European nations?
Not too many. As a matter of fact, I would
venture to say
almost
Germany,
none. But
other than Germany, who has even had a? I mean, England has a. Okay, so England's fine as far as women go, but minorities.
I think that you have to take into consideration the homogeneousness of, and I don't know if that's a word, but
homogeneity. I'm making that up too.
Of most of these societies, and why they have such a big problem with immigration, why it's such a big deal there, is because they are used to being a very strong majority, Caucasian, white, whatever, continent, and it's understandable that any country with a very strong majority of one particular group of people would very likely be the ones to lead, because just empirically, it doesn't make sense to say that a minority should be in charge of a majority, because that's where you have problems like you have in the Middle East with Bashar al-Assad, who's Alawite, is a minority, but they have a majority of all the government positions. Thus, they oppress the majority, which causes a lot of hatred, backlash, and war. Minorities very rarely can make war on majorities, but when they're in charge and they have the levers of government, they often are the perpetrators of genocide and the perpetrators of violence. Let me put it to you this way.
So when I say minorities, I don't mean like... The thing is this. They shouldn't be looked at... You shouldn't be looked at as a minority if you were born there, right? So I'm not saying let an outsider come in and rule things, but I'm saying...
no country allows that. I mean, you can't, I don't think you can be the leader of a country if you were not born there. You can be a leader in society, but most of the people born there they look the same. But the problem is that with America, we actually are on a trajectory to have Caucasians and quote unquote white people becoming a minority population in this country. And
Europe is afraid of the very same thing, right? So what I'm saying is we can't say that they are much better. They've succumbed to populism.
No. Of course. We're talking about a continent that's still riddled with dictators, that has constitutional and non-constitutional monarchies. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of things that we as Americans are like, whoa, we can't have that here. But yet we are willing to popularly allow dictatorial and authoritarian tendencies to come out of our leadership. We do have a lot of growing up to do. We are still, for all intents and purposes, a very young country. And I'm not saying that we need to exactly model ourselves off of the Germans or the British or the French.
Speaking of the British, right?
Speaking of.
They have a new princess now who happens to be an American. Did you see some of the headlines from like prominent news organizations and some tabloids over there with the issues they were dealing with in regards to the color of her skin and things like that? I'm just saying they're not as progressive. In some places they are.
I may be pronouncing her name wrong. The woman who married one of the Nick
Prince
Jonas,
Harry.
Priyat Chopra. I hope I'm not mispronouncing her name, but she just married Nick Jonas, and she's actually friends with Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
And just had an interview with her, and she was, talking about that. Like, it's so, it's difficult, but at the same time understandable, and from her point of view, that as a minority and as a woman and as an American, the kind of things that people are willing to say to you, and even today on the New Yorker Radio Hour, they were talking about women. In this guy that's doing a show, that did the show The Wire and The Deuce, and understanding that, especially with anonymity, that men in particular have a penchant for disparaging and misogynistic undertones, and when you have the ability to hide yourself behind a keyboard, it's very easy for you to say things like women shouldn't be in charge or black people aren't real people, until you sit them down in a room and you put them in front of a woman or a black person. They have to physically see, now they're confronted with everything that they thought was wrong, that this black man is a man, that this woman is a human being, and that they are just as smart. And the only way to get out of that is to be condescending, is to cross your arms like Trump does at every meeting. He just sits there, blah, 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 and just spills stupidity.
You know, Trump. You watch Trump at some of these meetings, and he's like a toddler when you're trying to feed them vegetables.
Yep. No, no, bad information. Don't want that. Can't handle 5-minute briefing, but I'll spend 3 hours watching Fox and Friends. I think that men who demand loyalty and do not earn it don't deserve it, and they are just cookie cutter dictators. He makes fun of people's names. David Pecker, the guy that owns the tabloid, the biggest tabloid in the country, who had a safe with Trump's secrets and he emptied it out before the inauguration, granted immunity by the Mueller investigation to testify. What do you think that means? Which I think that means that the safe was not necessarily emptied. And so that is why Donald Trump does not like flippers, and he thinks that they should be prosecuted.
Now, so we have Michael Cohen, who is
Michael Cohen
singing like a bird. Right, we got Paul Manafort, who's just holding out for his pardon. We have David Pecker, which has a safe. We have Omarosa, who's gonna uncover. She's a sleeper cell in the Trump organization to uncover the Edward tape. We have his ex-doorman and his child based on an affair. We have Michael Flynn, who's been working with them for a while. Papadopoulos was wearing a wire.
Mr. Cohen actually, through his attorney, has said that under no circumstances would he accept a pardon.
Yeah, now, until he's offered one. Well, it's not like he's been.
This is what I've been looking forward to in the show. At some point,
Mueller's gonna have Giuliani flip on Trump.
Well, Giuliani might just do it by accident because he's just stupid. What I really wanted to talk about today, and what I was hoping to get to for the meat of the story, is Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen,
not to be confused with Michael Caine.
No, do not confuse the two. He'll be very upset. You do not need Alfred coming to smack you upside your head. Apparently, he knows martial arts. I'd like to expound on this, and I definitely want to hear your thoughts, but I just want to get this out there. And even if your young Padawan wants to throw in a comment or two, the youth might have some insight to this.
Miss Baldiaki's watching us. Hello.
Michael Cohen pleads guilty, refuses to take a pardon, gets stabbed a little bit on Twitter from the president, but not too much.
You can't refuse something that wasn't offered. But
has been a fixer and an aggressive attorney. Does not mind corruption, does not mind doing something wrong if it means they'll succeed.
And he'd take a bullet for Trump.
Said he would take a bullet for him. We've started the show off talking about the mob. I guess we can call it a mob mentality for all intents and purposes, where Don just wants to be the Don. What if Michael Cohen is truly as loyal to Donald Trump as he used to say that he was? And in so much as that he would be willing to perjure himself in order to undermine the Mueller investigation, provide them false information, go on the record and have Mueller's team support what he says, use it as evidence, and then come to find that it was false because Michael Cohen is willing to spend the rest of his life in jail for Donald Trump and is willing to fall on the sword. He's willing to take the bullet. If you know anything about terrorism, how many people are willing to blow themselves up to commit martyrdom, to let their families be cast to the wind and subject to all manner of harmful things? There is, in my mind, the possibility that Michael Cohen is
I can't wait to talk about
doing
this.
For Donald Trump the same thing that these jihadist terrorists do when they blow themselves up in a marketplace. The same thing that mob people have done. They've kept silent because they know that it's worse if they talk. And he is talking. And if we think that Donald Trump is the Don and this big mob type boss, then we also have to then agree that he'd be willing to use the same tactics that the mob uses to keep these canaries quiet, to keep these stool pigeons off the stool, so to speak. Okay. I think that it's very likely that that is what could be the case.
Okay. I think, can you give me a single? I think you are 1,000% wrong, and you only need to look at the last 20 years of Donald Trump's life and who he has surrounded himself with. He surrounded himself with a bunch of self-interested, cravens that would turn on him the moment it was advantageous to them.
The Bailishes of the world.
Right. And so they're not smart enough to plan something like that. And Mueller is not stupid enough to fall for something like that, because if you look at the Paul Manafort case, he said you don't even have to listen to Rick Gates. Your primary thing here is look at the evidence, right? Mueller is not going to bring anything forward that he can't corroborate through several sources and show a hard line of paperwork and evidence. So no, even if that's what they were planning, and they're not, right? Michael Cohen would take a bullet for Trump, but he wouldn't go to jail for Trump, right?
I see him as a possible double agent.
Do you think
I really like what you're saying. I really want that to be what it is. No,
I'm just saying, look at the Paul Manafort case, and you owe me $1 because I told you it'd be over in less than 2 weeks.
But was it less than 2 weeks?
No, you said 2 months. We can go back to those 2 episodes. I want my goddamn $1. I want my money. I will hunt you down.
We will litigate this in court, sir.
We can. But anyways, Mueller is not looking at what all these admitted liars are saying. He's looking at the evidence. So if they can point him to evidence and he can get actual paperwork, right? You notice in Cohen's guilty plea, we knew he was talking about the president, but he didn't even mention the president's name, right? Unless they have hardcore concrete proof, Mueller's not going forward with it. So look at the report. That's all you got to do.
Yes.
No chance. Mueller's like, oh, Michael Cohen, you seem like a stand-up guy. I'm just going to take your word on what you say.
It's not. Listen, I get that. I really do. And I'm not saying that I'm trying to develop a conspiracy theory.
Do you think Mueller is a clown?
I don't. I think Mueller is incredibly smart.
You think he's thorough?
But Sun Tzu would argue, though, that if you can figure out what someone's strength is, then you can figure out what their weakness is. And if Mueller is terribly smart and covers all his bases and corroborates every bit of evidence possible, then all you have to do is remember that you don't ever want to get in trouble. And for 20 years, your fixers that have gotten you out of many legal jams and have silenced many people would have also...
your fixers who were never facing jail time.
Who were never facing jail time, of course, absolutely. But that you can't just assume that someone who's done everything he's done and gotten where he's gotten and became the president of the United States against all these odds doesn't have some pawns in place that are willing to go down for him, that are willing to lie and create false evidence, and they are willing to say and corroborate things that maybe didn't happen or happened a different way in order to make it so that when... Is it raining outside?
No. That may be the fan.
No, it's going away now. In any case, these are the types of people that are not willing to look at where their future is going to be. They are willing to take the hit. They're willing to go to jail to know that they'll go down in history as the one that protected him or took the bullet for him. There are good martyrs and bad martyrs, obviously, but right now we have a situation, in my opinion, where he is very, very willing to talk. Almost eager, and Trump is not coming at him as hard as he would even come after someone like Maxine Waters. He's
coming at Michael Cohen.
Yeah, I mean,
because
he said some things.
What is he gonna do? Listen. It does the case is not going to be built around Michael Cohen. Listen, Michael Cohen doesn't even have a plea deal at this stage, right?
Yeah, he does.
Mueller, no, he doesn't have a cooperation deal. Right? There's no deal with the Mueller team. None. Zero. He is trying to telegraph that he has information in hopes that Mueller will work into some kind of agreement with him before his sentencing comes. If you look at his guilty plea, he was asked that. So he's not getting any of that. He's hoping he gets sentenced to less time because he's confessing, and he wants to get some sort of immunity the way Pecker has, or at least a reduced sentence if he cooperates with the Mueller team.
Well, I certainly hope that is the case, and I would really hate it if something that Michael Cohen did caused the entire investigation to collapse. I'd be really upset about that.
Static is crazy.
Yeah, it's coming and going. It's like a little waviness.
It feels like.
Oh my God! What if we're being tapped?
What if we're being
when
recorded?
Side note,
move your arm from there really quick. I want to see if it goes away.
Side note: while coming back to the United States through Dublin Airport, they have pre-clearance, which is customs there, so that when you get to the States, you can just go.
Okay.
And I was detained by Homeland Security. And at first I thought it was because of the show, and I was like, oh, that's kind of an honor actually to be detained because Donald Trump's pictures.
No way you got detained because of the show.
You don't know that yet. His picture was up there on the wall, and I was just looking at it. I was just so, God, I just want to spit on that picture. So can't believe that this is the guy whose face I have to see while I'm walking through a fantastic experience, vacation. And I'm coming back, and they detained me because they said I had a common last name. Because legally, my last name is Rodriguez Oswald. I am, of birth, technically Hispanic. I don't understand that concept because it is a hyphenated last name.
So they stopped you because they thought you were of Latin descent.
No, they stopped me because the reasoning, and they just kept using the same phrase, you have a common last name. Yet, I do not believe that I would ever see a John Smith being detained. I believe that I was detained because my name sounded too brown. And they said, oh, I guess maybe there's a lot of Rodriguez's in the world, and maybe some of them are on a list for something. But isn't the point of the passport and paying all the money and having these advanced documents that are almost counterfeit proof, that are scanned, and you see the stamps, and you have these pictures, because everywhere you go is CCTV over there. Just to pass through the gates, you have to have your picture taken from your face, and they have to match it up with all these records. How is it possible that is a reason to detain an American citizen? They took my passport, and they held me, and they did not ask me a single question for over half an hour. I almost missed my flight home at 8 o'clock in the morning, or 8:30 in the morning. And when I asked them why I was being held, they just kept repeating, you have a common last name.
Yeah, Rodriguez is
Rodriguez,
what they were looking at.
That's what they were looking at. But they scan every part of that document. They have my passport on file. I've got an American flag around my neck. I've got a tattoo of New Jersey on my leg. I'm standing there. I'm talking to them. I'm asking why I'm being detained. I'm asking how long it will take. And the gentleman, as often people do when they have a badge of authority, tend to be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more like, I'm in charge and I'll do what I want regardless of what you want. And I didn't sit down as they requested. I stood and I watched them, and I just kept asking, when what is happening here? And to the point where he called me over and is like, you should sit down. I was like, do I legally have to sit down? Am I required to sit down? He said no, and it's like, but it's not going to make it move any faster. To which I responded, will it make it go any slower? And then he asked me what my last name was, and I said Rodriguez. I didn't say Rodriguez Oswald because I just didn't feel like getting into this whole thing with him about why I say that. And then he asked if I was traveling with anybody. Pointed to my fiance. She stood up. Very clearly a Caucasian woman.
New fiance.
My new fiance. Very clearly a Caucasian woman.
Not that you had an old fiance, but your new fiance.
My only fiance.
Yes.
And not that I would hate to believe it true, but as soon as he seemed to see that I was traveling with a young Caucasian woman,
a white woman,
he then not a minute after saying it, my process wasn't going to go through any faster. He said, "Okay, you're free to go," and he handed me my passport. No questions.
That could have been a coincidence.
I'm hoping it was
Correlation
a coincidence.
Is not always causation.
I know. But the fact is, I was asked no questions. My bags didn't look as if they'd been searched, and if they had, it was very nice. There's nothing but dirty clothes, and some duty-free stuff. But I actually, I went through that and experienced that, and this is the country that we, I'm proud of every time I come home, and I feel really good to be home. But I'm so not proud of the leadership that we are exposing the rest of the world to, that we are living in a country that is very willing to say that illegal immigrants are rapists and murderers and call them out for things like Molly Tibbet, who was murdered, and her family said that they did not want this to be politicized, and yet people like Newt Gingrich and the rest of his just creeps are willing to, and Tommy Loren, are going in there saying this could be your daughter, this could be your sister, this could be your friend.
Transparent they are with the politicization, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? to use a woman's death for their political benefit. And the notion that you're going to connect the fact that the person that killed her happened to be an undocumented immigrant.
They say, but his lawyer put forward documentation that shows he's a legal resident.
Fantastic.
But yet they're
no. But what they're really doing is saying brown people are coming to kill you. Mm-hmm. By the way, I just want to go on a little rant because I think it's time for us to wrap up now. We're hitting an
approved.
Hour. This is not really a rant, but something that sort of grinds my gears. So, what's her name? Jennifer Garner has a new movie coming out called Peppermint, right? And so, like cartel gang members kill her family, and now the rest of the movie, and the legal system doesn't protect her, doesn't do anything about it. And then the movie is her going around as a vigilante, killing like brown people, basically. Cartel members.
Is this like anything like Cicero or Sicario or whatever that movie was with?
Nothing like Sicario.
Where he just went around killing people? Or like Liam Neeson's Taken, where he went around killing people?
It's from the director of Taken, I think.
But you raised some protest with the idea of a white woman killing a bunch of brown people?
Yes.
Extrajudicial killings?
Yes. Because it feels like propaganda right out of the Trump playbook, right? They're coming to get you. The system isn't going to save you. You got to go and kill these brown people yourself because they're just gangs coming over the border taking your kids. It's the same thing. If you watch the new Death Wish, right, which felt super tone deaf, which was Bruce Willis doing the same thing, right? It feels very weird, and for a movie like that to come out right now, it's like this could be a commercial. What time could a
movie like that come out? I mean, a movie that talks about illegal immigration and people being killed like that, there is an audience for it right now, and it might be a very short window of opportunity to make money because opportunists don't care; they just want to make their money. And Jennifer Garner should have been a little bit smarter in something like that. But if it's a good script, it's a good script. I don't know anything about the movie. But I can tell you that Americans love movies about extrajudicial killings. I mean, we love The Punisher.
The Punisher show was so, to me...
Because he was killing a bunch of white people.
It wasn't that. He killed black people, too. But because they took the angle of... I think Punisher's killing... He killed all across the board. Black, white, Latin,
Thanos
whatever.
Style?
Yeah, exactly. The point is, Punisher, I don't know how they pulled it off, but they did it in such a way where it was like you not only felt for him, but the people he was killing, they went out of their way to make it feel like these guys, like...
Yeah, and I think about for the past 20 years, people have been making movies about corrupt government officials out to get you and how that honorable citizen has to get. I mean, think of Will Smith and Enemy of the State. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Enemy of the state.
I think you should watch the Peppermint trailer.
I don't want to watch the Peppermint trailers. The only peppermint I want is a York patty.
I think you should watch it. It feels very weird right now in that, and it's basically going to come out right before the midterm elections. I don't think that that's a mistake.
Okay, well, think about how right before the elections in Virginia for governor, I hope I'm not confusing with North Carolina, but where the Republican had aired, and I think it was Virginia, had aired attack ads just like they did against Phil Murphy, saying that they love MS-13, they love the gangs are coming, blah blah blah, and that turned out to backfire on them, and it is attributed to being why they lost narrowly to Democrats in places where Republicans should have won, because there are some, just like there were people that were quiet about supporting Donald Trump and didn't want to talk about it because they didn't want people to say anything to them, and they voted for him secretly in the voting booth. There are Republicans out there who don't want other Republicans to know that they're against Trump, so they keep quiet about it, or they keep quiet about the candidate that's running on that platform, and they vote against them, but then say they supported them in public.
All I'm saying is I'm skipping Peppermint.
I'm also skipping Peppermint.
You should watch the trailer, though.
Well, I know you have On the Reel coming up soon, but one last, my little tidbit that doesn't really have much to do with what we've talked about, because I think we've gotten through everything we wanted to do. But Kevin Spacey's most recent movie that was released,
$126. That, okay, I do have something to say about that. We actually talked about this on Monday's show, but I will just bring it up again here. what they fail to mention in that column is that it was a limited release, first of all.
Of course.
Thirdly, it did not, and when I say limited, usually a limited release will release in like New York and California. It didn't release in New York or California, the two biggest film markets in the country. So they threw it in a couple of theaters or in random places around the country. And it's literally the name of the movie is Billionaire Boys Club. It's about like white men behaving badly. Maybe it just wasn't a good movie.
Wrong time. Just like this is the right time, seemingly, for someone opportunistic about cashing in on racial biases. I'm just saying,
I don't think that is.
That was the wrong time.
And by the way, that
also Kevin Spacey has been.
But it's also trouble. Not. This is the other thing that they fail to leave out. It's not a Kevin Spacey is in it, but he is not the lead. It is not a Kevin Spacey movie. And there are other people that work on. This is the other problem when we can't separate the art from the artist. Hundreds, if not thousands of people, like regular people, believe it or not just the big movie stars
Best
on
boys
camera.
And rips.
Right. Working class people work on these movies. Or just actors that are trying to make a name for themselves. They work on these movies. And because one person did like terrible things or shitty things that we boycott the whole movie, I think it's kind of fucked up. Personally.
I completely agree with you. I do find it difficult to separate the art from the person, but art is bigger than a person, and if a story, if an image is worth 1,000 words, you can only have, how many things can you say about, the picture of in your head of Kevin Spacey touching a little boy, or of Harvey Weinstein and his grossness sitting in a bathtub talking to a woman. Yeah, they made great things, but does that justify what they, allowing them to continue making the art?
Okay, it's not about, the art was already made.
Yeah, but I'm saying, do you let them continue making the art? Do you let Kevin Spacey keep being in movies? Do you let Harvey Weinstein keep producing things, knowing now what you know about him? Yeah, I can say when we didn't know or when we were ignoring it conveniently, it was fine because we liked the art that they were producing. But when they stop producing that, or when they continue to produce that art after we know these things, just like Donald Trump continues to be president after we know all the things he has,
and we
disagree
fine.
with it. But we disagree with it. We don't think he should be allowed to do so. And Al Franken was taken down for it, just as Kevin Spacey was, despite the massive universe between what they did or what they were accused of.
Al Franken was a sacrificial lamb so that the Democrats could have a talking point that they are, in contrast to the Republicans who are enablers, they say that they are willing to eat their young. That's what Al Franken was about, but that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is that I do think we have to think about some of these things within context. For example, does this mean they should remove The Usual Suspects from sale?
No, I think that
should Netflix never show an episode of House of Cards again?
Is not going to be, and why Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is now suspended, and the actors are allowed to look for other work because. Despite, I thought originally that the Guardians 3 was being suspended because Guardians 2 sucked and we all hated what Star-Lord did in Infinity War. And I can't forgive him for that.
Guardians 2 did not suck.
Guardians 2 sucked.
I think Guardians 2 may have been better than the first one, but please, you continue.
Guardians
we do
2
all hate Star-Lord for Infinity War.
And I thought that that's why it was at first, and then I remembered, James Gunn said what he said. But look, this was something discovered years ago, and even Donald Trump goes on about Paul Manafort. They dug up a 12-year-old tax case, and they put him in for that. We are a society that should be willing to hold people accountable for something they did, even if it's outside statute of limitations or if it was a long time ago.
Okay, here's the problem. Because it sounds like you're saying that James Gunn should have been fired, and I
vehemently
disagree.
I don't think he should have been fired.
I vehemently disagree.
I disagree.
James Gunn, these things were public. He said them. The tweets were taken out of context. He used to work for Trauma, which is like kind of what they did.
James Gunn and replace it with Al Franken. That's exactly how I feel in my head. Al Franken shouldn't have lost a job, nor should have James. But it's weird how we are willing to punish people the same way for very different crimes.
Yeah, because everything is either a 0 or a 10, right? I either love you or I completely hate you, and you're the worst thing to happen to humanity. That's why
petty marijuana offense can land a black man in jail for 20 years and you get 10 days probation and a fine if you're white. depending on where you are and where the court is.
We're veering off, but the I guess the thing that I want to let's look at Harvey Weinstein, right? If we're gonna now, and maybe if Harvey Weinstein is a bad business risk, then people shouldn't work with him. But this idea that we're gonna boycott stuff, I don't know. I don't think that that's a path to the future. This idea that people have to just go away forever.
Listen, if I found out that Da Vinci had touched a little boy or a little girl, I'm not gonna hate the Mona Lisa all of a sudden. But if he is ever reincarnated and wants to keep doing stuff, and be like, hey, now you.
All right.
Now you hold up 1 second.
Are you still watching Roman Polanski movies?
No.
Okay.
I don't really know what movies he put out recently.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Okay. But I think that does wrap up a little bit of the show. We really appreciate all the people that are watching in the beginning, all of our friends. Thank you so much. Do know that we are.
Oh, Courtney says he was in on that bet.
I know
he wants his money too.
But we have to go back and find the episode to prove that it was said because truth isn't truth.
No, not anymore.
Truth isn't truth.
And freedom isn't free. Costs $1.05.
Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to our desk man over there, Mr. LeVar Jr.
Our new little producer over there.
And Mr. Steve Johnson. Thank you for putting all this together too. We've gone through 38 episodes now, going strong. Simulcasting on YouTube and Facebook. Please subscribe. Please like. Please share with your friends. We promise if you like us, you'll love us. And where are they going to find you at, Steve, later on?
On Monday, you can find me on the Real. We're going to keep you up to date on the latest in the world of TV and movies. I don't know what we're talking about yet because, like last week, it's been a pretty slow news week. But Boots Riley is apparently upset with Spike Lee over his new movie Black Klansman because he feels like he's making light of the struggles that
Jordan Peele and Spike Lee together.
And Spike Lee says he could care less about what Boots Riley thinks. So
of course, the man's name is Boots. Why is it? I mean, whatever.
All right,
you're gonna find me, and I don't know if it's scrolling at the bottom of the screen or not now.
It will be.
But somewhere on a map, if you find the location for St. Louis, you'll find my dubs that I'm
Joseph So Swalled. Oh, you can also find me at Stephen A.M. Johnson on your favorite social media network, as long as it's not Snapchat.
So I will be developing Snapchat for him secretly. But yes, Joseph So Swalled on the Twitters. I don't Twitter very often, but if you find us on Facebook and you message or friend request us, as Courtney and some other people have done, we very much like to have conversations outside the show. It affects what we do on the show. Thank you. And we will hope to see you next Saturday afternoon, possibly broadcasting every once in a while on a Tuesday as we go into the fall and winter season.
We're talking about it.
Yeah, things change. Seasons change. Shows change.
And we're working on an audio version.
Audio version. I'll read a book to you. I'll read the Constitution.
No, you won't. I won't be there.
Damn it. All right. Well, thank you all again so much for watching. That is the show for the week. We appreciate it. And have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Stay safe.
Hugs, not trunks. All right.
Is it Christmas? Because that is a wrap.
It is. How we doing over there? Are we still live?